No on casinos, no on tort reform, yes to marijuana, which leaves economic development, tenure, and marijuana. The GOP's major Arkansas candidates sticking with their presidential nominee, and the governor's own Trans-Pacific Treaty and investment update next on Arkansas Week.
Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.
This is Arkansas Week.
Hello again, everyone. Thanks for joining us for Arkansas Week, the Arkansas Supreme Court, and the Arkansas November ballot. That's where we begin tonight. Heather Yates joins us from the UCA Political Science faculty. Wesley Brown, reporter, columnist, editor, Talk Business and Politics. Michael Hiblin from KUAR News, Public Radio in Central Arkansas. And thanks to everybody for joining us. Michael, let's start with you. We had action by the Supreme Court. It wouldn't be October anyway, and sometimes November if the Arkansas Supreme Court didn't weigh in on ballot issues.
Yeah, less than a month before Election Day, and the state Supreme Court rolled in on 3 items, knocking 2 off the ballot, or at least saying the votes won't count. One of those was the casino proposal that would have allowed casinos to be placed in Boone, Miller, and Washington counties. The court ruled that the ballot title did not honestly and accurately reflected what was contained in the proposal. And this had been challenged by a group which was largely made up of the 2 racetracks in Arkansas that I'm sure didn't like the idea of competition. And the justices agreed, knocked it off. We've had more than $2 million in television ads bought in fighting this alone, and that doesn't include direct mail. I came home last night to find this in my mailbox, the Arkansas Wins flyer, touting that, and just had to laugh. But the other item knocked off. The state Supreme Court said voters cannot consider whether to impose limits in medical liability cases. And this had a direct connection to the Michael Morton case, where you had a nursing home owner fined $5 million. A judge eventually lowered that and to $1 million, and that
set off a chain reaction.
A whole different item, but
political legal.
But on this tort reform, it was a unanimous decision that said that there were problems with how the language was for the petitions that people signed that actually put this on the ballot. A special master had been appointed by the court and found there were problems, and the justices unanimously agreed.
The master's report had sort of signaled that there may be profound problems, or that the court might just agree with him that there were significant problems in that process.
And then finally, you had a decision on one of the medical marijuana proposals, the constitutional amendment, and the court said that the language to be presented to voters does clearly state what the proposal will do. And it's important to note that Arkansas voters narrowly defeated a similar proposal 4 years ago. Haven't heard anything from the other proposal. The one that was affirmed Thursday was the one by David Couch. The one that we still haven't heard anything about was the one Melissa Fulks. And the difference there is that that one would, in addition to dispensaries, would also allow people to grow their own. People who live to a certain distance from a dispensary.
And if I can speak to the casinos ballot issue that was struck down, there were 2 challenges brought forth by the group called Protect Arkansas Values, which also had sponsored the ads that we saw hit the airwaves. So at the end of September, there were 2 challenges, one on the 29th and the 30th. On the 29th, this organization wanted to challenge the validity of 12,000 signatures, which just stand alone, if the court had struck down those signatures, voters as not certifiable, it would not have hit the ballot. But then that opened it up to vulnerability for then the proponents to come back and challenge the validity of that case. So, and then on September 30th, the final challenge was filed with the court, which the Arkansas Supreme Court agreed with. And it's an interesting case of federalism, that the state Supreme Court acknowledged federal supremacy law with I think it was the Federal Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act that forbids sports betting. And so the Arkansas Supreme Court said, yes, this agrees, this is supreme law, this supplants state law, so therefore our state constitution will be in conflict with federal law. It is now off the ballot. So I thought that was just an interesting backstory narrative that landed this contestation onto the court.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things is, in our conversations with the governor on all three of these issues, I guess he was neutral on the tort reform. He was for the casino and of course against the marijuana. So he kind of batted 500 on those issues. But the thing he said that was interesting was that so late that this process is kind of getting difficult because you're getting so late into the political process, only as we stand now 25 days before the election, and you having, as you see, you're still getting mailers in the mail and people are still, and the other issue is that the difficulties, the language on these three amendments are becoming increasingly more difficult to read. They're becoming complex, and can you imagine on election day when a voter goes into the booth and if they've like a lot of us have never studied these issues, to go in the ballot, it may take 30 minutes to vote going into the booth on these issues. So, and the governor expressed some concerns about these things going so late into the process, and hopeful that during a few legislative sessions that the legislature will look at kind of changing how this process is taking. We would have had 7 ballot issues, So he expressed quite a bit of concern about that.
With what, and the court may we're taping our broadcast Friday morning per usual, so it's entirely possible that by sundown the Supreme Court will have ruled one way or the other on marijuana 2, let's call it for shorthand.
Yeah, and worth noting too that the backer of the other medical marijuana proposal that hasn't been rolled on, Melissa Folks, had said when she launched her campaign that if both medical marijuana proposals were on the ballot, both would lose. And she said there's really only room for one. And if it now ends up being the other one, well, and she had been calling on David Couch to withdraw his effort. But there's that suggestion. But the belief is that thinking has changed, and you've got about half the states around the country now have approved medical marijuana, and after such a narrow defeat last time, they think that there's likelihood of passage.
Well, even should 2 survive court review, that will leave 2 on the ballot anyway. Does that perhaps minimize the confusion to some extent, but how much? As a practical political matter, walking into the booth, a lot of voters don't follow the Arkansas Supreme Court. Quite a few don't read the papers much. You've still got 2 on there.
Two on there. One is an act, so it sounds just like a legislative act, and the other is an amendment. Right. And when voters are reading amendments, immediately they're thinking this is a change to our state charter, and it is a constitutional change, it is permanent, and that might incite a few more anxieties inside that voting booth. And it's, I think, worthy to note that the backstory on this is David Couch believed that the failure of the 2012 ballot initiative was because of the grow your own provision. And some of the backstory is the political split from the group, the Arkansans for Compassionate Care, that sponsored the 2012 ballot initiative, and that he is driven by this belief, the logic and the strategy that it was the grow your own provision that defeated it. And so the amendment is offering the medical marijuana or the medical medical cannabis without the grow your own provision, whereas the Medical Cannabis Act still retains the grow your own provision. And so when it comes down to the electoral competition, it might actually be the competition between grow your own versus the not, don't grow your own provision.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty left on the ballot anyway.
For sure.
And not just political races, but you're watching those as well.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So last Friday, another October surprise, but weekly October surprises, I have a feeling, that are coming our way. So we never know. Another one might roll out this afternoon. But as of last Friday, so a scandal hits the Trump campaign. A leaked audio visual tape from Access Hollywood where Donald Trump is on a hot mic discussing and glorifying sexual assault and objectifying women. And so over the weekend, we saw the GOP abandonment, or another list rolls out of Republican rank and file who are withdrawing their support from Donald Trump. However, in Arkansas, as we are coming off of the congressional debates this week, all four incumbent Republicans are condemning the tape, condemning what Donald Trump said, but retaining their support. So there's a couple. 5 counting Mr. Bozeman. That's true. That's true. Yes. And so this could actually help the GOP in Arkansas, whereas it may not help the image of the GOP nationally. Donald Trump is the standard bearer nationally, so we saw a lot of the Republican rank and file jumping ship. But in Arkansas, this is an opportunity possibly for the Republican incumbents to differentiate themselves from their standard bearer. And really what it's coming down to, and the language is not being used, but it's a party vote now rather than a personality vote. And I think that's what a lot of the Republican candidates on the ballot were actually getting at when they were condemning Donald Trump's verbiage, but maintaining their support, saying they are going to vote for him in November. Ultimately, I think this is a strategy that the Republican Party in the state differentiates themselves from the standard bearer and provides Arkansans. The Republican Party in Arkansas, we are the real Republican Party, right? This is just a fluke for our party, but we are the real choice. That could possibly be a strategy at play here. But
I still think one of the things that's happening that is becoming increasingly uncomfortable for even the Arkansas Republicans to deal with the constant, as you said, an October surprise every week, to deal with these revelations coming out of the Trump camp. In attending the press conference with Governor Hutchinson, you could tell he was just uncomfortable. He knew the questions were coming, and he was very uncomfortable about answering questions about Trump. He said, he's our standard bearer. I'm going to be a team player. We're going to support him, but I'm very uncomfortable with the things that he's saying, and basically he said, I'm distancing myself away from he's basically saying I'm not going to even watch the presidential campaign anymore. Yeah. So it's becoming increasingly comfortable. Every Republican candidate in Arkansas, we're going to ask those questions, and they are increasingly coming up with new ways to distance themselves from Donald Trump.
Well, having sat 6 feet away from him during all the 5 debates, one thing stood out. You could have been at home and noticed this. There was a reluctance to utter the word Trump.
Yes.
There's no problem in saying Hillary or her or Bubba or Republican ticket or vote Republican.
Right.
And I think one of the incumbents managed to get through the entire hour without uttering the word
That's
Trump.
right. That's right. Yeah. And there's no doubt that this turn of events is making the state elected officials, congressional elected officials, uneasy, as it should. And Arkansans should be asking the question. And so this is a very uncomfortable situation where the elected officials are incumbents. The candidates do not want to utter the name because then that is association and that is spatial association. Okay, but by not mentioning the presidential candidate's name in the same sentence with their campaign, it is a strategy to implement distance, but it also is the backstory here, the back narrative is pledging support to the party, signaling to the RNC chair, I am a loyal Republican. I do not support our standard bearer, Governor Asa Hutchinson. I support the nominee for the party. I don't support the personality. And really what is positioning here is pledging party support. Pledging party loyalty, not for the executive, but it is really not for the executive, so to speak, for the top of the ticket. But this is really the emergent 2012 Republican playbook coming back. The campaign for the executive might be mission abort, but we can salvage Congress is what the Republican Party's playbook is really.
All the more interesting because this just comes days after the speaker said, hey, it's every man for himself.
Right.
You know, if you need to jump off, we understand.
And you see a backlash in states where you have senators who are now totally distancing themselves or saying they won't vote for Trump. I think it was up to 16. And some of those people are now getting a major backlash from Trump supporters. But I think it's been interesting to see in Arkansas, the governor's comments on Thursday sounded a whole lot like what Senator Bozeman said Wednesday.
Right.
There's a very common theme of these are both very flawed candidates. I don't necessarily like Donald Trump, and I'm certainly offended by him. But both said you've got to look at the bigger picture and look at judicial appointments. And
the Supreme Court and fighting ISIS and those conservative ideas that this candidate Trump will support those conservative ideas. Although in the past there's some inclination that he didn't support those kind of conservative ideas. So I think it's a game they're going to play, but it's a very uneasy game.
And it's worth noting, I mean, Governor Hutchinson back in March or so was saying Donald Trump's words were scary. Back when he had first backed the former Governor Huckabee, but then was backing Marco Rubio at the time. And nothing has come out that makes Trump's temperament look any better. And point blank, Senator Bozeman said that he is comfortable with the president's temperament, with having the nuclear codes was brought up. He used that, and his opponent, Connor Eldridge, the Democratic opponent, also mentioned that.
Well, if there was, other than a reluctance to utter the word Trump, there was no, and I'm hearing this, Heather, from Republicans across the state.
Which is
Supreme Court,
right.
Supreme Court, Supreme
Right.
Court, Supreme
Exactly.
Court, Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court issue is becoming the single issue to mobilize the party base. And so this is the singular strategy and becoming really the battle cry for 2016, the Republican Party. And it's also worthy to note, too, that the Arkansan Republican Party represents probably, a disproportionate level of conservative Republicans versus other states in the Union, where other states have more moderate Republicans in their base. But the Arkansas party base is pretty ideologically pure when it comes down to the Republican beliefs. And so that also is another factor that's playing into this uneasiness with Donald Trump being the Republican standard bearer, but yet the need to pledge ideological support and loyalty to the party around the Supreme Court nomination, the vacancy there. And so this is going to become, or has already become, the singular mobilizing issue.
And it's already has. You have already seen it in the religious and the evangelical community. I've seen interviews with religious leaders who said, the things that Donald Trump says are terrible.
Right.
But we believe that he will support a conservative Supreme Court nominee, and that is why we're going to support it. He went to Liberty University, and the people that were there who were supporting him repeated that line over and over again. So that you're saying that it's already become the narrative. It's already become the out, so to speak, that the Republican Party leader or a member of the party can go to support.
Because their logic is as long as there is a president with an R behind their name, we have access, if the advocacy groups are thinking that there is a point of access there, then the executive can be lobbied. There's a chance, whereas when there's an executive with a D by their name, there's no point of access or diminished points of access.
And we also have still the steady trickle of WikiLeaks emails coming out. And I think it's about 9,000 that have come out, and they say there's something, is it 30,000, suggesting there's a lot more to come out.
That's all? 30,000?
But it's not, getting much traction because it is showing the internal communication within Hillary Clinton's campaign and the evolution of issues and how to respond to things. And this would get more attention, but when you've got, recordings and stuff as, extreme as what Donald Trump said, that's easy to consume, the middle-of-the-road voters. So that's not getting as much, but the suggestion more will keep coming.
Right.
All right, on to Trans-Pacific agreement. This is a unilateral.
Trans-Pacific agreement of sorts. Our governor is headed to China for the second time in the past year. This time he's going to. It's more of a diplomatic trip. I think last time he went, he was to recruit the sandpaper development, which is going down in Arkadelphia, a paper mill that the Chinese sandpaper conglomerate is going to build. But this time it's more of diplomatic. Arkansas, for Arkansas's agri and poultry industry, there are some trade barriers to trading with China now. There's still an avian flu kind of restriction for allowing some of our poultry to enter into China, and also there's some restrictions from a WTO complaint that prevents rice and other agri products from Arkansas and the rest of the United States from coming into China. So Governor Hutchinson is going on his own diplomatic trip to China to talk with high-placed Chinese officials in Beijing to discuss how Arkansas can get those primarily poultry and rice into China. And if it does, it will be a boon for Arkansas agricultural community, especially over the next year, it's highly likely that we also may enter into Cuba. So it's pretty interesting that we might enter into two communist countries or with communist ties in the next year, and it'll be a boon for our agricultural community. So that's part of the trip. And the question was asked, well, are you getting away from the political questions? But he's going on a 6-day trip with just 4 weeks ago to the election. So, and he's going to meet with other officials. He's going to meet with Walmart, Tyson, and some other Arkansas companies over. And so it's good. He said it's going to be a good trip for Arkansas. He believes there will be some announcements, possibly some announcements when he comes back to say there may be other Chinese companies that may be recruited to come to Arkansas. So,
well, it was a little surprising to city folk, anyway, that China would want to import rice.
Yeah,
that's a stereotype at play. In play.
It's the number one staple in that country, and I think it's the one thing that Arkansas is marketing is that our rice is this high grade rice that is that the Chinese people would love. So I think that's the pitch that the Arkansas Rice Federation and others are but also the fact that this huge market, if you enter into the Chinese market with this product, can you imagine how the boon it would be to rice farmers in Stuttgart or South Arkansas? It would be huge. And for our governor to be able to break down that barrier would be a huge point for him too.
Yeah, Wesley, would you look for any significant action in Washington before the end of the year or in the next several months, even beyond January, on the Cuba trade?
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any real push. I think the Obama administration is doing what it can with these memorandums of understanding. You're seeing flights into Cuba now. You're seeing there's free. Some of our universities are already going down there. There's cultural agreements. So you're going to continue to see that. But it's up to the Congress. And the Congress has signaled that as long as Obama is in office, they're not going to try to come to an agreement to remove the embargo to Cuba. On the other end of that, the same way with the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Agreement, that is a similar, that would open up our trade to China and Far East countries, and both Hillary and Trump have said that they are against this agreement, although in some of the WikiLeaks things,
a wink.
Hillary has hinted that she will support it if she gets in office. So these two, the TPP and the Cuba trade embargo, are something that the next president is probably going to have to deal with. I don't see those things any resolve in Congress to push these things through now.
And on the issue of Cuba, I heard on the radio driving in this morning that just another step of loosening. They're taking out the $100 limit in Cuban rum and cigars.
So vice reigns supreme. Okay. And a couple of program notes before we close. Immediately following this broadcast, our biannual program, an analysis program of the ballot issues, at least two of which are no longer valid, so the diligent viewer will take note of that in advance. And also, during the debate this past week, one of the candidates, Mr. Chris Hayes, the Libertarian nominee for Congress, his opening statement was interrupted by a severe weather alert, which was not the problem of, or not instituted by AE10, but was done automatically by, I think, the National Weather Service. Anyway, Mr. Hayes, a portion of Mr. Hayes' opening statement was blocked. Again, inadvertently, certainly no intent on our part. And a reminder that on Sunday, the 30th, all the debates will be aired again, so you can see Mr. Hayes' statement in its entirety, along with all the rest of those debates. We're out of time. Thanks for joining us. See you next week.
Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.